Yes.
Perfect. Alrighty. So the item before you will provide an update on the district's delinquent account status and the recommendation from staff regarding the resumption of late fees and shutoffs for non-paying customers. There we go. So in March of 2020, the district temporarily suspended late fees and water shutoffs to support customers facing financial challenges due to the pandemic. In April of 2020, the governor signed Executive Order N-4220, which formally suspended water providers from discontinuing water service to residential and essential businesses for non-payment. The governor's order, however, was clear that customers would still be responsible for amounts they owed to water systems for the provision of water services. This chart shows the amounts owed to the district as of July 31st, 2021, and then 2 weeks later on August 16th, 2021. This amount represents only those accounts that would normally be shut off for non-payment. The district is now owed $45,002.92 in shut-off amounts. This is a significant increase in just 2 weeks from when the agenda report was originally prepared. Throughout the moratorium on fees and shutoffs, staff has attempted to stay in contact with delinquent customers. Calls have been made to current customers on the delinquency list, reminding them to make any payment they're able to afford. Letters have been sent advising customers of various assistance programs they can apply for. And payment arrangements have been offered. To date, only 3 customers on the shutoff list have requested a payment arrangement. As per SB 998 and our administrative code, this is the timeline we follow when an account becomes delinquent. While the bill becomes delinquent after 18 days, the district does not apply late fees until the 48th day and will only proceed with a shutoff on the 80th day after numerous attempts to contact the customer. On June 11, 2021, right before the state of California fully reopened, the governor signed Executive Order N-0821, which essentially lifted the moratorium on shutoffs for non-payment. It identified that Executive Order N-4020 was among the various orders that would expire on September 30th, 2021. Staff is therefore recommending that the board reinstate late fees effective November 18th, 2021, and shutoffs effective January 4th, 2022. Staff is also prepared to maintain the status quo of not charging late fees or initiating shutoffs until a time directed by the board. We can also implement any other action the board may reach after discussion today. This concludes our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. And Board Member Mosca, I see your hand is up. I don't know if you were up before Board Member Lines, but go ahead.
I'll go. Thank you to the staff for the presentation. My question is, when somebody is behind on their bill, what do we do in terms of outreach to them and working with them in terms of getting up to date? Because we could have some customers that are several months behind, and so if it was hard for them because of several different circumstances to pay the bill, it's certainly going to be hard for them moving forward to pay the bill and also pay the arrearage. And so just wondering how do we basically work with them on the arrears that are owed, even the amount that's going to be owing going forward?
Excellent question. Yes. So when we do make the payment arrangements, it essentially removes the delinquent amount from their active amount due, and they can then pay down. Well, the way we work with payment arrangements, they would need to pay on their past due balance plus keep their current balance. However, we can certainly expand the time that they have to pay off the amount that's owed so that it isn't quite a hardship on them.
All right. So my question really is about that past due amount or arrearage. How do we is there anything in the code that says what that amount should be? a percentage, or they need to have it paid off within 12 months? Or how do we decide what is a proper amount? I guess my point would be that I favor a flexibility for the staff to work with the customer to identify and understand what their resources are, and this is with regard to the arrearage. What can they pay? What can they afford to pay toward the amount that they owe and back pay? Of course, still paying what's owed as we're moving forward.
Yes. So we do have a payment arrangement option that is available online. We have it currently set up as part of the SB 998 process, and that requirement allows up to a year to make the payments back. However, in light of the situation, and we do have customers that have large balances, we would absolutely be flexible in the way that we can extend it out. So there's nothing that says that we cannot work with a customer to make a payment arrangement that will work for them. And there are no fees or percentages or anything associated with doing a payment arrangement.
Right. I think that's really compassionate. So we have the 12 months, but we can work with the customer, and there's no interest or penalties or associated with it. What is the largest amount in back pay that's owed by any one individual customer?
I don't have that list in front of me right now. However, if I remember correctly, it is probably close to $7,500.
$7,500. Is that a one-off situation, or are there many? I think there are only 60 customers that are behind.
There are now 71.
71. All right. So 60 as the last time. Now we had 11. We have 11 more.
Right.
So is that a anomaly situation, $7,500, or is that?
That is, yes. There are a handful of customers that are probably in that $3,000 to $5,500 range, but these are customers who have not paid their bill sometimes since 2019.
All right. One last question. And do you know when we look at OMWD, which is my water district here in Alevenheim and for half of our city, do we know what OMWD is doing, what Santa Fe Irrigation District is doing? Have we kind of looked at to see, where they're at in terms of how many of their customers, what percentage of their customer base is behind, and what they're doing, as the governor's order is being lifted?
Yes, absolutely. So I am not aware of their percentages or how much money they are owed. However, I am aware of the fact that Alevenheim is resuming they've already resumed late fees. They will resume shutoffs in October, on October 4th, as soon as the moratorium lifts.
Yeah, the staff report says Santa Fe is also, Helix and the city of Oceanside are among others. So it seems like the trend is towards reinstating these.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that.
If you like, I can share my screen, and I do have a slide that does kind of basically break down who's charging late fees, who will be doing shutoffs, and all of that.
Sure. Thank you.
So there you go. So your first one are the districts that are currently already charging the late fees. The second bullet point will be those districts that have already approved resuming the late fees and when they will be resuming them. The tentative means districts like us who are going before their board still. And then the unknown are people who basically did not respond to my poll when I asked.
Did you focus your poll on North County, or is it just that there are
I
a lot
actually
of North
focused
County?
it on the entire region.
All right.
So this would be a good portion of the water districts within San Diego County.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Board member Lines?
Thank you, Chair. I realize you might not have the answer to the question I'm about ready to ask, but I will ask it. I believe that we are addressing this now because of the governor issued executive order that is due to expire September 30th. I mean, I just made that assumption, but I think that's what our time frame is based on. However, it does say in the documents that this this moratorium on this suspension of people paying for the water service is to support customers facing financial challenges during COVID-19 pandemic, and it's meant to be in place until we're officially no longer in the pandemic. So I don't know if it's just me or if my other colleagues would feel the same way, but I see with kids going back to school and with the Delta variant still creating a lot of concern, that I wonder if the governor will extend this deadline on the executive order beyond September. I'll just leave it like that and see if anyone has a comment on that.
Enrico.
Board Member Lyons, we are not aware of any extension that the governor might make on his executive order. We're all kind of in a wait and see status. We brought this item forward knowing that the Delta variant seems to be picking up its pace, and we will not be surprised at all if the governor does decide to extend it. But we thought it was prudent that staff make this presentation to you so that we can decide on a way forward.
Then my follow-up question is, if the governor extends it, should we just wait on this decision? I guess I see that people's financial conditions might not be any better now than they were a year ago. And if schools close and kids go back home and parents can't work, and that will affect their income, I just don't see a clear near-term light at the end of that tunnel, unfortunately. And I'm wondering if this action would be premature. That's more of a comment than a question.
Board Member Lyons, also one of the reasons why we went with the November 18th date was to give us some time to assess the situation and to see if he was going to extend it. Like you can see from the slides, several of the districts are doing it like right as soon as that September 30th date passes. But we really wanted to give ourselves some time to do some individual outreach to our customers who are on the delinquent status, help them get on payment arrangements, help them understand their situation so we can best support them.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Hensy.
Thank you. It's really unfortunate that we're seeing this situation in Encinitas, and I feel a lot of compassion for our neighbors, precisely for what Councilmember Lyons said, that we're still in the thick of it. And yet I also see the need to create some urgency around folks getting a plan together about how they can start making their minimum payments. So my question is, to what extent has our staff explored those options that you listed, including United Way and Modest Needs and different organizations that might be able to support our customers? And how likely is it that our customers, should they go through this process and spend their time trying to get these funds, how likely is it that they would get it? That's my first question. And then my second question is, what would keep us from putting something at the bottom of everybody's bill that if they wanted to add on a certain amount of money to help pay for their neighbor's bill, that they could start chipping away at this $4,500 we're looking at?
Well, thank you. As far as adding an amount to the bill, unfortunately, a lot of our bills go through a lockbox, and there would be absolutely no way for us to verify if someone didn't just overpay their bill and actually wanted it to go to a cause that would, and we would have to develop some kind of fund that it wouldn't go into our revenue fund. It would definitely have to be a split fund that is dedicated to that. And I think rules require that we actually have someone dedicated to administering that fund as well, because I don't think it's something that employees can manage. And that would be, maybe that's a higher level finance question, but I remember having some conversations around that.
I'll add on to what Amber is saying, because actually President Kranz had asked for this many months ago, the possibility of having our ongoing customers make a donation, or maybe a $3 donation to assist their fellow customers. And after researching it, what we learned was a program such as that would need to be administered by an outside agency that's not connected to the district, because any district involvement in it by staff would basically almost be a gift of public funds, in the sense that the district staff administering such a program is really not allowed as a special district. So and that's what we also looked at, the possibility of having the city's CDBG program, whoever their nonprofit provider is, be able to administer such a program. And it turned out it was going to be pretty expensive. In terms of following up with the customers in terms of the various programs such as United Way, all we could do was provide that information to the customers, and then they had to reach out to those agencies and submit applications, which I believe some of them were pretty detailed. You know, they would ask for when exactly the person got laid off, was it related to COVID? They had to submit tax returns and a lot of personal information that we would not be privy to. So it was entirely up to the customers to follow up on that. What we as a district have been doing is following up on, we expect that the state is going to very soon, hopefully, move forward on disseminating some of the funds that were going to be disseminated directly to the water purveyors, such as ourselves. Just recently, we filled out the paperwork to be recipients of those funds. And then right now we're in the process of completing a survey to identify exactly how many of our customers are delinquent, how much is owed, but the state has not requested for specific information about individual customers. But we do have, I believe, until September 10th to provide that information to the state. And then we'll wait and see. But I believe, and Amber, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we think the state is going to be disseminating those funds by sometime in November.
Yes, that is my understanding, is they only have a small, actually, time frame as part of the response effort to actually disseminate the funds, and they should start. Another reason we went November 18th is to hope that some of these funds, we would at least know what we are getting, and they would be able to have them sent out by just after November 1st.
Okay, that's hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Blakespear.
Yes, thank you. First, I wanted to just ask if we had any public comments on this item.
No, we do not.
Okay. So none of these 71 people have come to make any suggestions or speak to this item if they knew it was on the agenda. At the very beginning, you said that there had been a big increase just since the agenda was posted or written, since the agenda was written. What is the explanation for that?
We're really not sure what's driving this, but throughout this process, we've been receiving payments from some of the people on the list, and others have not made any attempt at all. I think we have one customer who reaches out frequently and pays us $1. So I think this particular period, since we prepared the report until Monday when we did the follow-up to just see what the current status is, it's been kind of surprising to see that hardly anyone made a payment since July 31st through Monday, August 16th. So that's kind of been surprising for us as well, because throughout we had a few customers that would consistently contact us and make a small payment here and there.
Okay, so 71 is a lot for us, right? Like, do we because there used to be a fee and then it would be shut off, so we would never get this number of people. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes, so our average, I would say, shut off. I mean, we might get 1 to 3 a week for each cycle. A lot of the times we wouldn't get any. We would either already set them up with the payment arrangement so that they're no longer on the shut off list, or they would pay.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think in the big picture, we want to get back to a system where we're able to provide people with a payment plan, but not to just indefinitely have them not paying their water bill. Because, over time, that does, I think, lead to some portion of fraudulent efforts. I'm not sure. I think sometimes that's very much overstated, because most people are responsible and do want to pay for the things that they take and use, and water being one of them. And so, the idea that we would move back toward a more, a system where people who can't pay we work with them, but then at a certain point, they do need to be able to move on to a different living arrangement where they're able to afford the water bill. It does seem to me like we should be headed back toward that. So I definitely support what Councilmember Mosca said about flexibility for staff to work with people as much as possible. It is important that those people work with staff and not just blow them off or not participate at all. And so I guess the staff, I'll just say to Councilmember Lyons' point, I guess my preference would be that, first of all, I don't see it as likely that schools are going to shut down again. I think the consequences were so severe for students, and there's just, the political climate has changed in California. I just don't see that would happen again. But if it did, because for various reasons, we were so unhealthy to go to school, then I think we would reevaluate this pretty quickly, and we could always go back to making a quick decision about water rates. Certainly schools and COVID they're related to the extent they affect the economy, right? To the extent people are able to work or not able to work, and therefore able or not able to pay their water bill, not just standing on its own, because getting COVID doesn't necessarily implicate your water bill unless it means that you can't work and you're out of a job, or you have to stay home with your kid, or that kind of thing. So I guess, I feel okay about staff recommendation. I do think I could go a lot of different directions on this topic tonight. So, there are a lot of different ways to look at it. But it does seem like it's a good idea if you look at all these different cities here who are choosing to opt back in over time, that, we should do that too, just as being responsible for this utility that we oversee. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Yeah, so I note that in May, the governor his proposed budget included $1 billion for, it's in here, it says the governor is proposing $1 billion to help Californians pay their overdue water bills. Is that something that the legislature decided to remove, or do we know what the status of that situation is?
That was kind of what we had referred to previously, that we do have a survey that we need to fill out. Any district that has a revenue impact has to fill out something from the state, and we have to have it in by September 10th. And those are the funds that I was referring to that I'm hoping that we might be able to get, that should be disseminated by November 1st.
Okay, so some of these folks that are in arrears, it could be that they will benefit from this particular program, but I think that it's important that we, start to shift towards the regular procedures that we used. I think the other thing that I would be very interested in knowing is whether there's any way, whether we could establish a hardship program so that we were able to confirm that people that are not paying their bills, in fact, are experiencing some financial hardship for one particular reason or another, whether it's loss of job to COVID or any issues. But it kind of bothers me. That big bill that you mentioned seems excessive. So it almost seems as if that person not only is not paying their bills, but they're using a significant amount of water. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I think that the only thing that will stop this is if we go back to what you might call standard operating procedures. So board member Lyons, I see your hands up again. Did you have more questions or comments?
Thank you, President Kranz. I did have a question about the information that Amber was presenting about the money that the state will be allotting to water purveyors. And Tony, you and President Kranz, you just also asked about that. Another question about it is when it seems like we would receive that money. Of course, we don't know yet, but we are a water purveyor, and we have had losses that we can characterize that the money could go towards. So I'm going to assume we will get some money, and tell me if you think that's not a correct assumption. But when we get that money, do we attribute it to the losses we've experienced because of these delinquent accounts? I mean, it would seem like that would be then the logical thing that we would need to do to make the water district whole again because of these delinquent accounts. Is that how that works? Or is that too simple of a way to characterize it? Amber?
Thank you. Yes, that is exactly correct. When we fill out the survey, they one of the questions is asking if we have like basically a spreadsheet of the accounts that are delinquent and the amounts. And another important thing to note is that they will only reimburse us for accounts that were delinquent between March 1st and June 15th. So March 4th of 2020 and June 15th of 2021. So as I kind of had mentioned previously, a couple of these accounts might have even been from 2019. And then there are going to be some accounts maybe after the fact that they're still going to have those delinquent balances on there, even if they were able to get, partial bills reimbursed. They may still have previous or post balances that are due.
Okay, thank you. That's a great clarification. I really appreciate that. Seems like we have some missing information, just some moving bits and pieces here. Some things we don't know today, but I'm leaning towards the staff's recommendation for reinstating the late fees in November and then shutoffs for non-payment in January. However, it seems to me as though we might benefit from mandating a payment plan from the delinquent customers. And I don't know if that's possible, but it seems like it's in their best interest and the district's best interest also to mandate a payment plan, even if it's that $1. But
it is our intention to reach out to every customer on the delinquency list and offer them the opportunity for a payment arrangement. And that's something that we can also go in and help them create. It's something they can apply for online themselves. We will work with each customer. If they refuse, they would then just fall into that shut-off cycle. And usually once your water gets turned off, as soon as they actually create the payment arrangement, we would then go out, turn their water on, not charge them any additional fees for that in this situation. Because normally there would be the $40 late fee and then the $40 turn off and turn on. But we would waive fees in light of the understanding that they're getting a payment arrangement so that we can just continue to assist them.
Board member Mosca?
Yeah, I think some of my questions have been answered between President Krantz and Vice President Blakespear and Board Member Lyons. But I am curious. Um, the money that's coming from the state for this purpose, you say that we would get reimbursed for some of this arrearage if it occurred during certain dates. Does it also have to be related to COVID? And does there have to be proof? Do the customers have to produce proof, and we have to produce proof that they got behind because of COVID?
My understanding, I think, and I need to look at the survey a little bit more, but what the state is doing is they're assuming that between those dates of March 4th, 2020 and June 15, 2021, anybody on that list was impacted by that. So anything prior to that would not be eligible for this. We're not aware at this time of them requiring any proof that it was absolutely COVID related. We are just providing them with the information that this is what has impacted us during the pandemic or during the dates that they have provided us with. And then I think as the discussion has revealed, there are some of those customers that even prior to COVID were already delinquent, and others will continue to be delinquent even after. But without that mechanism of late fees and potential shutoffs, I feel like some of the customers just have no incentive to make any kind of payment.
So when we were getting dollars vis-a-vis the county or directly from the federal government on care dollars, there were a ton of different questions that we had to answer in the affirmative in terms of its relationship to CARES to COVID. And I know that the state has received billions of dollars or a ton of money in COVID relief from the federal government. And so some of this money may be from the federal government. So we should resolve whether or not these questions are going to be asked of us, and that whether these monies only go to folks that not only incurred the debt within a certain period of time, but also that it's related to COVID. And so then my next question is, do we have a process in place that identifies if these customers are actually getting behind because of COVID? So we have 71 customers. One of the customers is $7,500. I'm not sure what span of time, but it's already been said that sounds like a heavy usage. Have we classified these customers? Are they residential customers? Are they commercial customers? Are they industrial customers? Are they short-term rentals? What type of customer is this? And do we know why they got behind? So that when these dollars come in, we know whether or not some of these customers are actually even eligible for relief. Do we know any of that information?
I can say that the bulk of the 71 customers are indeed residential. We do have a small handful of commercial accounts. Some of those commercial accounts have paid, and then they just maybe haven't paid recently. We even have the California State Parks on there, but a lot of times they're just waiting for their warrants to come through. So we don't really classify those as like unpaid water bills because they just usually come a little bit later. So while we did create the cutoff list based exactly on which customers would now be shut off or on payment, the total that I gave you of the $45,000 and 71 customers was actually removing the state parks from there, because I know that warrant will come in. So I think that there's I know when we do our payment arrangement, we have options that the customer can select, because part of SB 998 is if you are like on Medicare or if you are below the poverty level. And then one of the options that we also had was if you were impacted by COVID. So the payment arrangement is already set up for customers to, choose basically that it was due to the impacts of COVID. And at that point, if the board would so direct, we could request them to provide maybe attachments of how or when or why they were impacted by COVID. But my personal feeling is if the government or if the state's funds are going to come to us and it's going to cover our revenue from this period to that period, I don't know why we would then ask them to fill out a payment arrangement if their bills are already going to be covered.
Well, if that's the case, then you're right. But if it's not, and it's like the CARES dollars that we've gotten before, we may want to get busy on understanding the classification of why they got behind and all that stuff. So thank you for the information, and I'm going to move the staff's recommendation at this time.
And staff recommendations 1 and 2, 3 was to maintain status quo. We're not interested in that. And then we had an item 4 in the recommended actions that was to explore other alternatives. So we're at reinstate fees effective November 18, 2021, and reinstate shutoffs for non-payment effective January 4, 2020. Do I understand that's your motion, board member?
That is my motion. Thank you, President Krantz, for reviewing that. That is my motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by board member Hinsey.
Can I ask for a little discussion before we call for the vote? I just didn't know if we were wanting some flexibility to respond when and if the state is reevaluating the executive order.
Well, my expectation is that we would likely have that back to the board when that comes forward, and that staff will be working, with that in mind. And I would encourage staff to. I think that the San Diego Water District policy is generally to do everything we can to accommodate the situations that present themselves. So hopefully we'll keep up that. So
appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Are you ready to vote?
Yes.
Alrighty. Board Member Hinsey,
Yes.
Board Member Lyons,
Yes.
Board Member Mosca,
Yes.
Vice President Blakespear,
Yes.
and President Krantz.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to informational items, we have a presentation on potable reuse and the landscape that is presented to us here in this 2021. Presenters are the San Alejo JPA General Manager Mike Thornton and Shane Trussell, President of Trussell Technologies. They'll have a little history in their slide presentation, but this is an item that I asked to bring forward because I know that the issue of potable reuse, we've considered it as a board several times before. We've paid for studies before. There was money budgeted for an additional study to move us to the next step. And I got to looking into that, and it appears that we kind of ended up dead in the water. So I asked that this item be brought forward to talk a little bit about where we've been and where we might go. So with that, I don't know if Sam is going to introduce them or whether Mike and Shane are going to start.
I can start. Thank you, President Krantz and members of the board. In 2019, the district joined Santa Fe Irrigation District and San Alejo Joint Power Authority, Olive High Water District, and Leucadia Wastewater District to prepare the recycled water expansion plan. The plan and its recommendation were presented to the board during the May 2019 board meeting. The district's share of the cost at the time was $72,000. 2 years have passed since then, and so we have, per President Krantz's request, asked the General Manager of the San Alejo Power Authority, Mr. Mike Thornton, and Dr. Shane Trussell, President of Trussell Technologies, to provide a brief of the study, its findings, and to discuss the proposed next steps. And with that, I will just turn it over to Mike and Shane.
Thank you,
Mike?
Sam. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. President Krantz, Board of Directors, thank you for having me here. I'm Mike Thornton, as many of you know, General Manager of San Alejo Joint Powers Authority. And with me, I have Dr. Shane Trussell, who is a key author on both reports that I'll mention today. I'll start sharing my screen now. Great. Can everyone see that?
We can.
Yes.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So let's talk about potable reuse in the landscape that we are in 2021. A little background, in 2015, we conducted a potable reuse feasibility study, which we completed and presented in 2016. The purpose of this report was to evaluate if we, San Alejo Joint Powers Authority, the Escondido Water District, the Santa Fe Irrigation District, could create a multi-agency potable reuse project that would leverage existing infrastructure that had been built to serve the potable water system, but had since aged out and now sits unused. It was a very creative concept looking at how we can purify water at the San Alejo campus in Cardiff, and then use an existing abandoned 30-inch pipeline to move the water from Cardiff to the Escondido Reservoir, where this existing pipeline terminates. The Escondido Reservoir would be a natural buffer that would receive this purified water, and then from there it'd be conveyed through an existing infrastructure to the R.E. Badger Water Treatment Facility for one final treatment, disinfection, and then return back to the potable water system for both the benefit of Escondido Water District and the Santa Fe Irrigation District. What we found in this study was that there is a lot of unique elements that are present with this project that many other projects might not enjoy. And it appeared that this project did not hit against any fatal flaws, that this project appeared to be viable in both the technical and financial aspects. So from that effort, in 2018, we commenced work on a potable reuse study to further dig into some of the details and look at unanswered questions from the 16 study. We also expanded the group to include the Olivenheim Municipal Water District and the Leucadia Wastewater District. Some of the questions that we were looking to answer was, how much water did we think the water districts would want to purchase from the project? Was there enough wastewater available in the service area to meet this demand? And then again, what is the cost? What is the anticipated cost, not just of the capital side of things, but then the final water cost? And how does that compare to what we think the imported water will be at designated dates in the future? So the supplies, what we found was the supplies are available in the surface area using a combination of approaches of bringing the water together. We have the natural influent that comes to the San Alejo Joint Powers Authority. We have the City of Del Mar's wastewater, which since this report, we have had moved over to San Alejo and now is part of our sewer system provisions. So we have that wastewater captured. We have the Escondido Outfall wastewater diversion implemented, so we can take wastewater that the city of Escondido is sending to the ocean and divert it for our reclamation. Then we have the option, again, to further expand the water we're recycling to the city of Encinitas' Encinitas Sanitary Division. This is wastewater that's collected at the Moonlight Beach pump station, and that water pumps north to the Bataquitos sewer pump station, and then ultimately to the Encino Wastewater Authority. So this is water that we could build a pipeline to and give it the option of going north or south, depending on where the reclamation allowances are. And that would, again, shifting our mindset more of thinking of water as a power grid, like the electrical system, with a variety of options versus the traditional way of thinking about wastewater where it only has one place to go. And so that was some creativity that we applied to this project. We also included the Leucadia Wastewater's Gaffner Water Reclamation Facility, because this could be a facility that would backfeed some of the non-potable water demands, or what we call our purple pipe water. And then we have the Rancho Santa Fe Community Service District wastewater treatment plants, which are small wastewater treatment plants that are challenged to find an opportunity to recycle their wastewater because it's salty, but they also don't have an ocean outfall system. So there's a wastewater supply that is a bit stranded, and we thought to bring that in could be creative. The 2019 study evaluated 4 scenarios, 2 of which were deemed the most viable, and I'll talk about those 2 scenarios. The first scenario, which we call scenario 2, is a potable use only option, producing about 3,500 acre feet of water a year. Put that into perspective that maybe a layperson could relate to, that's about 1.1 billion gallons annually. The infrastructure, again, that we're looking to utilize is this 30-inch abandoned water pipeline, the water campus in Cardiff, and the Sanitary Reservoir, which would be the environmental buffer that receives it, gives it retention time of about 2 months, and then the water would go to the RE Badger water treatment plant for filtration and disinfection. This project has a capital cost estimated at just under $120 million. We used some conservative cost estimating on this number because we knew that the level of detail we had for the project, we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of contingency to cover things that we might not have seen at that resolution. The 2018 cost for this water was estimated at $2,350 an acre foot, which would be expensive as compared to local water costs, which would be less expensive than desal water. And the important thing, as I'll show out, is it projects with better cost certainty than other imported water supplies that the water districts currently access. So when we take this unit cost and we project out at what we speculate the County Water Authority water prices might be for imported water, and we use the range bound of 5% on the low end and 8% escalation on the high end. This was based at looking at historic cost increases by the San Diego County Water Authority. What we see is this project projects out, that's the straight line, the straight blue line projects out at the lower projection of where we think imported water costs will be in the future. What that tells us is that this project appears to be viable and that could justify for the next step of evaluation. The other scenario that we looked at was to create a potable reuse and a irrigation, recycled water irrigation type project, which would satisfy a larger demand, roughly 4,200 acre feet. And that would allow inclusion for the Olivenheim Municipal Water District, who has needs for recycled water at the Bridges Golf Course, and it would also provide recycled water for the Rancho Santa Fe Golf Course. Both of those golf courses are currently using potable water, so it would result as a net savings of potable water for the region. This project produces more water, but it also has higher capital cost as we have some more pipelines and other ancillary infrastructure to capture this potable and non-potable system. One nice allowance of this project is that by building it in steps, you're not faced with the full project cost in the first step, which would be the non-potable expansion of the system, the expansion of the main carrier pipeline, the 30-inch pipeline up to the reservoir, and then sequencing to a pure water project after that to capture the full utilization of the 4,200 acre feet. This project also shows that it compares well financially with what we anticipate potable water costs would be. The time frame of a potable reuse project is, in generic terms, looked at on a decade and a half to do the planning, the proof work with the regulatory agencies, the design, the construction, the implementation. We think because this is a smaller project, where there's some assets already in place, such as the pipeline alignment. And a pipeline alignment of this order of size can be a significant effort. So having that alignment already secured is a significant plus for the project. We think that we can do this project in 10 years. And so once the project receives the go and the coalition of agencies reach agreement on the project, having a 10-year outlook seems reasonable for this. One of the other interesting things on this project is this project doesn't have any land acquisition requirements. So again, that's a very favorable outcome. And because the pipeline work is predominantly there, you're just refurbishing an existing pipeline. It makes the CEQA and the environmental documents much more simple. So next steps, where do we go from here? We did the 16 and the 19 study. Both seemed positive and encouraging further study. The project team discussed, creating a financial model is critical because a project like this, the financial aspect of it is going to be a major driver of the project. The water districts are not in a position of substantial need of water at this time, which is very ironic because the state of California is such a difficult drought, but San Diego County is eluding that drought. And again, San Diego County and Southern California have put in substantial infrastructure investments over the last 20 years, which has helped make this drought not as impactful for our communities. So a financial model, refining the project alternatives, I think is a very important step. One of which is because direct potable use regulations are now coming out, which could give us some clarity on how we can simplify this project and maybe reduce further costs on it. Once we get the refined project alternatives clarified, then you'd want to produce the preliminary design, which will look at multiple projects and produce the best alternative as the recommended. And you'd want to start CEQA because the CEQA documentation and potentially NEPA documentation is critical for grant funding. And a lot of grant funding sources won't look at your application unless you have the CEQA, and again, for the federal side, the NEPA environmental documents produced. So these are the things that I think are important next steps and ones that, that should be considered. And I'll finish on this slide of this tremendous drought that is facing the state of California. We're seeing droughts occurring more frequently and more substantially. Again, many conclude this are results of climate change, and I think there's strong science that confirms that. It is reasonable to anticipate that more frequent droughts are in our horizon and that the severity of those droughts could be greater, just as the wet season could be also more intense. So some of the benefits, some of the gifts of climate change. And so the last thing I'll finish on is the recycle water project you start today is for the drought 10 years from now, just because of the timing and the complexity of these projects. That completes my presentation. And again, we have Dr. Shane Trussell here to handle any tough technical questions, and then I can take the softballs.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to say to anybody who's joining the Zoom session that this is the San Diego Water District Board meeting, and that we are running a little late, and the City Council meeting will start whenever Mayor Blakespear tells us we will be back on Zoom. So I see Board Member Lyons has her hand up.
Thank you, President Krantz, and thank you for requesting the San Elijo JPA come and present. I am happy to hear your informational item tonight, Michael. And I just did have one question, and perhaps you covered it, and if you did, I apologize. But you talked about the next step being to create the financial model or to fine tune what that financial model is. And I'm wondering if you have a time frame or a schedule on when you think that those questions will be answered. Probably not an easy task, but do you have some idea?
Good question. And I'm a little bit shooting from the hip because of course we don't have a scope of work created, which impacts the time it takes to do the work. But I do think that's something that could be produced and presented back to the boards in 2022. I think having again, finding some project clarity to refine some of these options to see if there are costs that we can contain, as well as are there things that direct potable reuse regulations might help this project would be beneficial. And I think having greater certainty on where we think the cost of this project will then give it potentially more enthusiasm by the local water districts to embrace it. Because if we can show that this is a cost competitive water supply, and we know the environmental benefits of such a project, I think that will get the enthusiasm to move the project further, faster.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Remember Mosca.
Thank you, Mike, for being here with us. You know, I've been excited about potable reuse for some time, serving on your board. I remember when we talked about this on Encinitas Wastewater Board, being a leader on that organization, and with the County Water Authority. Potable reuse is our future. Why are we basically flushing out good water out to the ocean? We could be using this water in a sustainable way, and in the future we need to do that. And so I'm happy that San Alejo is looking at this. You know, not only from a drought perspective, but a lot of North County cities have been talking to County Water Authority, and our long-term plan actually says that we're going to basically look at potable reuse, and that's going to be the additional supplies that are going to kind of fill that gap in the future between, you know, say for instance with Escondido Water District, where 50% of our water is coming from Lake Hodges. You know, where's the other 50% going to come from? Is it going to come from the Colorado? We know what's going on there. And so local sources of water like this are so critically important. You know, we have the desalination in our backyard, but, you know, at 2,000 or more per acre foot, it's just it's a lot of money for us. And so, you know, looking at local source of water like this is so important. And so I would say too that you know, Encinitas has an interest in making sure that Encina is also kind of in this deal, and that we're all working together in terms of economies of scale and savings, and that our wastewater that goes to Encina is also part of this. Encina board of directors and our strategic planning have given our leadership there, senior management there, direction to continue with a One Water North County kind of plan. And so my hope is that we're all working together. We're all kind of paddling in the same direction, which is potable reuse, either direct or indirect. I like the idea of indirect. If the studies show that it's more feasible than direct, then I'm all for it. And so I you know, again, just hope that we're all working together, and that we can kind of move in this direction as quickly as possible, and that we can be kept up to date, and that the political folks like us are able to kind of marshal the resources to get this moving forward as quickly as possible, because the state regulations frankly need, you know, a little kick to continue moving in the direction that we want them to move in. So thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Board Member Hensy.
Thank you. Just a question that kind of touches on what Councilmember Mosca talked about. I know this council serves on different water boards in the region, but I'm curious to know, in your opinion, Mike, who would be the lead agency on this, and what do we need to do as the decision makers to keep pushing towards this outcome in this direction?
Oh, that was a very good question. So at this time, it's about creating some alliances and some common interest in the project. We could have one district lead it. It could be a group a group of agencies leading it, but it will be in the end a coalition. To board member Mosco's point, we are in conversations with Encina. Our goal is to create a project that is one that could be complementary with what else is going on in North County, or one that could be independent, that it's not held hostage, but it's also one that could be easily complementary if that's the will of the region. In terms of making a decision of the next steps, if the group is smaller and it's San Alejo and it's Escondido, that moves faster. As we add more layers on, that can potentially add some complexity in terms of the speed at which that coalition moves forward at. But that's something that Assam and I can gauge the interest of others to find where's the interest group at today, so that we can make progress now versus waiting for maybe 10 agencies to decide that they want to move forward on this. So that's kind of the balancing. How many do you add in, and how long do you wait for them to decide if they want to come aboard?
Well, and the other point that I think is important to keep in mind is that these studies were essentially driven by the fact that we had an asset, a very valuable asset, that 30-inch pipe that runs from San Elijo JPA campus out to the Escondido Reservoir out there. And so, from what I've seen in terms of conversations regarding One Water, a lot of the talk included the construction of an additional pipe that would be significant, a huge chunk of money and add time to the project. So, for I think that in the interest of the ratepayers of San Diego Water District, and providing them with a stable supply of water, the sooner we kind of move in this direction where we're making use of that asset, the better. So ideally, we survey the agency landscape, and then we come up with a strategy where we have parallel tracks so that we're using the pipeline that exists as quickly as possible. So, Mike, if you could move slides back to get to the point where it's on the next steps slide.
No.
And, the question I have is, we budgeted years ago, $80,000, I believe, for these steps to be undertaken. And that study was never done. And so what I'm wondering, Isam and Mike, is whether those resources are adequate, or if it's too early to tell. What would it take to develop a scope of services?
I'll see you.
Show me right now. Assam, I'll let you take that one.
Okay. Well, we have, first of all, like Mike mentioned, we have to develop this financial model so that we can get other agencies to be interested in the project. And without doing that, it is really, we don't really have any way to sell the project as we think it needs to be at. So developing the financial model, and that cost, I don't really know how much that would be. It all depends on, Mike, do you have any idea what the cost of something like this would be for the small projects that we currently have?
I think if there is a combination of contributions between San Elijo and San Diego at $75,000 by each, I think $150,000 could develop the financial model and help dig into some of these project alternatives. And I'd be very happy to engage Encina to see if that's something that they would want to participate in too. I do think there's a lot of advantages, again, to make sure we're seeing the regional picture very well, and we're not missing an opportunity to team with another agency to leverage resources, while we're being mindful that we're not dragging out the timeline of the project so that we're just not making forward progress.
I agree with. I agree with Mike. I think we need to connect the dots here. I think that folks are moving with urgency. We know that Senator Bob Hertzberg is going to come back with his bill in terms of diversion of outfall. There's a lot of pressures on us, and I think that everybody's aware of that and is moving forward. So I don't think anybody. We had strategic planning with Encina, and we allocated money to move forward with these studies. And so my concern would be that we're being redundant here, and I want to make sure that we're all connecting the dots in one North County and working together, because I just think it makes a whole lot of sense. I think if we got to a point where it's clear that people are dragging their feet, which I don't see it, then I think that we would very much want to go on our own, and we have the capacity to do that. But right now it makes sense to kind of connect the dots and really see this as one, at least have conversations.
Well, but there seem to be feet dragging because this kind of got buried, and it's been a couple of years now since we last talked about it. So I'm very interested in resuscitating it. And the other concern that I have is, is, when we work together with them, I think the key issue is that we own this asset that could be put into use, I think, much quicker than any new construction might be. So, I'm okay with parallel tracks and continuing to work with Encina, but I think that if we get back to the focus of how do we use that asset we have, I think that the ratepayers of the San Diego Water District would benefit significantly.
Just one, I mean, the characterization of resuscitating, just because some folks don't hear what's going on, the fact is that we have been working hard on this for a while. Encina
and San Alejo, who are you talking about?
The entire region, San Alejo and Encina have been hard at work on this. We've been allocating money. This is in the long-term range, long-term planning of the County Water Authority that we're going to have this water. So I'm just saying that nobody is dragging their feet. Nothing has to be resuscitated. We just have to continue to push as hard as possible to make sure it's happening. The regulations are also not in place at this point in time. And so we're also looking at making sure that we're evolving those regulations.
Yeah, those regulations will catch up, and we've had this money budgeted for a couple of years. If we're not going to use it, we should put it back into the general and remove it from the budget. And so you can call it whatever you want. I just want to take a look at these, some of these items that are on these next steps. Board Member Lyons.
Thank you, President Krantz. Really quickly, I think a good tool might be if ESOM's willing and you are also, President Krantz, to add this as an agenda item to just report on status in future San Diego board meetings, maybe not every month, but maybe once a quarter anyway, just so that we know we're aware, we stay on top of it, it stays really current, and we all get informed. It's just a good way to kind of help things drive forward.
Well, but I don't know how we get to having a financial model if we don't take that step. So am I missing something, Mike? Is there something happening at the Water Authority or at the Encina that they're developing a financial model? How do we get a financial model if we don't take that step ourselves?
Right. And I think there's a great conversation going on here. To me, I think the next steps are again at staff level, where we engage Encina, we engage the local water districts that we've worked with to talk about, let's prepare a scope of work for the next step. Let's make sure we look at a couple key items, which is an inclusive project for North County, but also another project where each entity can go their own way. So they're not connected in such a way that there would be a drag in terms of scheduling. And then also this topic of financial model, and see if we can gauge interest in that scope of work and then bring that back to the board, I would think within 60 days, to see if we were successful, and then also to see, again, if we have the concurrence of the members to all cost share on that equally.
Yeah, so I think what I'd like to do is wrap this up by asking if I have board agreement, consensus to direct staff to develop to take these next steps to the point where they can bring it back in a staff report that is an action item and recommend next steps. And, Isam, maybe you work with board member Mosca. He's talking about things that have been happening that I'm certainly not aware of, haven't been on any San Diego Water District agenda. So maybe he's got more information that you could include in that staff report so that the board can have a clear picture about what it will take to move forward in these next steps, and whether it's lockstep with the One Water group or another group that we've put together, or that sort of thing. So does that make sense, what I just asked for?
Yeah, I mean, we can initiate discussions with other agencies that are involved both on this project and the Encina's project to figure out what we will take. But obviously that is going to take some time before we actually can get all these different agencies input. So if you give us some time, it gives us some kind of a plan in order for us to put something together, Mike and I, for another board meeting where we come back with some recommendation, or at least a staff report that gives you an update, like Board Member Lyons mentioned of what the steps that we have taken and how successful we are. And if needed be, we come in with an action item for you.
That'd be great.
And it sounds good to me, and I'd be happy to work with the general manager. I just want to be clear that we've had 2 board members attending Encinitas Wastewater Authority forever since we've become members, and our general manager Isham and before have been attending. We have been allocating money for years now on studies, and we have a study that the board just approved looking at the options of either going down toward going south, connecting with San Alejo, or going across. I've been a big proponent of connecting with San Alejo. So I just want to make sure that we know that this study, it's not, things are happening. And so if we don't know what's going on, we should connect with all the folks, all the different water districts and wastewater districts so that we're, understanding of what's going on, because we want to make sure that we're not redundant.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what you said, Board Member Mosca, they also have this pilot plan that Encinitas is getting on board beginning next month, I think, where they're going to do some testing in that regard. So
good.
Well, so what we probably want to do, since this is such an important topic, is to more formalize either by adding, as Council Board Member Lyons suggests, to having a regular agenda item that talks about what the other agencies are working on this issue. Because if we're just following along while others are taking steps that we're not aware of, it leaves us kind of in the dark. So when I get asked, hey, what's going on with that pipeline in the San Alejo Lagoon? How come you're not moving forward with potable reuse? And I have no answer for that ratepayer. It's not ideal. So
President Krantz, if you would like, I can ask Encinitas to come in and give us another presentation similar to the one that we have done today with San Alejo, just to give you more insight of what they are planning on doing.
I think, frankly, I'd prefer to have it as part of a staff report, but that I think gives us something. It gives us a good record to work with. It gives us a lot more detail. It may be in the end is something that we get a presentation on as well, but I think having it in a staff report would be very useful. I've not heard of any Encina plans that included the San Alejo pipeline. It was always about going north. So, it could be that I was just not, dialed into whoever was telling me that. But in the meantime, I think getting an agenda item put together for the board to consider these next steps and maybe action would be very helpful. So if there are no other questions from Mike or Shane or Issam, then I think we're done with this. Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Shane. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is board member reports pursuant to AB 1234. And hearing none, we will go on to the general manager's updates.
I just have 2 quick things, President Grant and members of the board. I just want to let you know that we have started a communication campaign on social media and for the district, and basically for 2 reasons. The first one is to assure our customers that although the majority of the state is in extreme drought conditions, our San Diego region is not, just because of the investments that we have done during the past between the Water Authority and the member agencies during the past 30 years. And also to thank our customers for doing their part by adopting a water conservation way of life and efficient use of water during the past years, and encourage them to continue to do so, and let them know that we are strong supporters of the governor's call for the public to save or to voluntarily cut back 15% of water use. The second item I just want to bring up quickly, the Santa Fe Irrigation District has completed the draft master plan, and as part of that, the findings came out to be that there is currently the joint facilities for the meets the regulatory requirements. There is no capacity-related improvements that are required, but there are several projects that are associated with aging infrastructure and reliability concerns. the draft master plan lists several capital improvement projects that are needed to ensure long-term reliability and services. The plan includes 15 joint facilities projects for a total cost of $55 million. Our share with that would be $22.5 million. In addition to that, they have completed their energy management study, and they are potentially talking about 2 projects that could cost up to $9 million, and the district cost would be $4 million. These cost estimates are at a high level. There are still going to be additional studies that will be conducted and condition assessments in order for us to define the scope of work for all these projects. And this is obviously spread over the 10-year period from 2022 to 2032, because that's what usually the master plans are. And we have evaluated our budget and the way we have been putting funds into our budget for the joint facilities. Santa Fe Irrigation District worked with us in order to spread the project so that will not have any major impacts on our customers or our budget for the Santa Fe Irrigation District. With that, I conclude my presentation.
Okay, and with that, we're adjourned to the next meeting of the San Diego Water District, which will be held on September 22nd of 2021. And with that, I will hand it off to Mayor Blakespear.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will take a 5-minute break here. So let's come back at 6:25 for our city council meeting. So we will see you then.